Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult, video number 316. Christianity in much of the Western world is steeply in decline. Why is this actually happening? Because again, this is the civilized world, by and large, as opposed to, the part of the world that's not so developed, maybe intellectually in some cases, depending on the political system. Why, therefore, would Christianity be collapsing? Now, the secularists, like the atheistic sorts, like a TJ would say, well, people are getting more educated. They've got no time for imaginary sky friends. The Christians would say it's, usually it's the devil or some malevolent political social force doing propaganda. So like the Antichrist is coming, so the church is dying. I'd point out there are some Christian movements that are growing, or at least remaining steady. It tends to be the more religious, like the more religiously orthodox movements in much of the Western world that are declining overall in membership. The Catholic Church would come to mind. Keep in mind, as an absolute total, worldwide especially, Catholicism is still the big kahuna and still growing. That's not because of growth of the religion as a proportion of the population in Europe. It's not because of the U.S. and Canada. It's because of parts of West Africa and Latin America. Now, I think that the reason why is that people are losing their faith, and really it's the fault of the organized religion itself. Now, of course, a Protestant and a Catholic aren't the same thing. For the Catholics, it's fundamentally the fault of the Pope. You went from a relatively religious stringency in even the 2000s, part of the 2010s. You get the current Pope, Pope Francis, of Catholicism. He does essentially a 180, and the problem is that if you consider that social movement to be progress, you can't simply smack people in the face and say, oh yeah, God changed his mind all of a sudden now that I'm here. It didn't work the way I think the Catholic cardinals that nominated the Pope to be in that position. I think that they were expecting that because he was reasonably personable, that he was the social media Pope, and that would suddenly draw like young people in. Young people have less time, generally speaking, to go to church. Like, they're busy doing other shit anyway. These days, it's dog eat dog, and everyone works fucking 7 days a week to get ahead anyway, because we live in a world of globalism. So, people have less time relatively to go to church. Then, you have certain Protestant movements. In their case, in many cases, I think it's televangelism. And really, the fundamental problem of Christianity's decline in parts of the West begins with that, especially in the 80s. You get these slicked-back, sleazy brand managers, essentially similar to what the Pope has been for Catholicism over the last few years. They're not religious at all. I doubt most of these people even believe in the God that they espouse. They're in it for money. Which is why you constantly catch these people in various scams and scandals. So you got fucking Peter Popoff and Pat Robertson and Joyce Meyer, Charles Stanley, Billy Graham Jr., and all these other shysters. You've got Haggart there, who literally still does ministry on a much smaller level. He got caught. His big thing was drugs are bad, being gay is bad, and then he gets found with an 18-year-old male escort and a bunch of crack and methamphetamine in a hotel room. These people, by and large, do not live the way that they preach, and so that undermines the system itself. Now, I'm making this video as someone who is anti-religious in the sense of organized religion, not anti-spiritual, and at this point I'm more ambivalent when it comes to like what faith or spirituality people particularly follow. I don't care. But Christianity as a proportion of the population is inarguably in decline. In most parts of the West. It would be, I would think, fruitful if Christians would look at the situation instead of blaming the devil or some conspiracy on one end, if they go full-on secular, like, well, I've lost my faith, the church is a lie, God is dead. On the other hand, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because, a lot of them will still have that nagging belief because of their upbringing, and they've just decided to subscribe to the Amazing Atheist or something. It would be interesting if Christians would, maybe with a more cerebral mind, look at the situation, say, maybe there's a problem with the actual hierarchical structure of some of these churches. Again, there are some groups that aren't shrinking. The Amish community has been steadily growing for a very long time. They're having no problems. Of course, it helps when you have 6 or 7 kids on average, but you still have first world medical capabilities. So they're growing. Certain Mennonite-style movement spin-offs. I think Mormonism at this point, its heyday was decades ago. They've sort of stalled out. Catholicism's growing, but only as an absolute number. Again, like here in the Netherlands. It's been quite a while since the Dutch were particularly religious. In fact, they might be, I think they're like the second most atheistic in Europe or even in the world. I think, aren't the Norwegians the most atheistic overall? Like they just, I mean, they're more used to burning churches, I think, at this point. Them and this, with the black metal movement, get some Varg in there. No, Christianity is on the wane largely because of its shitty leaders. They got decadent. And they got rich and therefore corrupt, started living completely differently from the canonical stories of the Bible. Like these people are supposed to live in poverty and be sort of communal with the other Christians and go around, trying to cleanse lepers and stuff, and instead, they sit on a throne like the Pope does. Or they drive a Rolls Royce and wear a Rolex. Well, that's not exactly the prosperity gospel bullshit, which is very, very popular in the 90s and 2000s especially. Just listen to, again, Joyce Meyer or something. Is Charles Stanley still alive? Hopefully that doofus croaked. These people are not really Christians, arguably. They're destroying the religion as a structure itself. It's funny, the thing destroying it, technically speaking, isn't even Christian in nature. Yeah, none of those people, and the Pope's not a Christian either. He's not a practicing Catholic. The idea that he is horseshit. That's about all. Peace out.